How's it going, everybody? Back with another Subaru specific video, again on the Blue Wagon. Today I'm going to show you how to completely remove and replace the rear wheel bearings. So this goes for Subaru Brumby, Leone, L series, so the Brumby and the Leone from 1979-80 to 84, and the L series is from 85 to 92, I think, 1992. They're all the same, and this is for the four-wheel drive models, not for the two-wheel drive. So I skipped the stage where I got this out of the car. I mean, if you're pretty handy with the spanners, you can get this out pretty quickly. Right, so first things first, once you get it out of the car, the main thing that people struggle with is this ring nut in the back. So those four holes, you need a special tool to get in there and undo that nut, and it's done up very, very tight. So it's over 200 Newton meters is the specification, but if your car is really old and rusty and crappy, then it's going to take a lot more than that to get that nut undone. The housing is actually quite thin up here, and when you're done, you bend the housing over into one of those tabs, into one of those slots, to stop this ring nut vibrating loose. So first thing you have to do is to, the book says to bend that tab out the way, but it's too stiff. I can't do that without breaking it, so I just grind it out, file it out, whatever you have to do. The most difficult part is the tool to get that undone. Now, the official tool looks something a bit like this. This is something I've made. If you've got access to a lathe, milling machine and that sort of thing, this is what the factory tool kind of looks like. It's important to have that reduced diameter in the middle as a guide, and then those four tabs to go into the nut. If you can't fabric hobble something like this together yourself, next best thing is just a bit of square RHS, some flat bar. I think that's 5mm flat bar. You cut it to, you just measure the length between the slots, cut that to the right length. You have to put a bit of a bend in it to get around the stub axle, but this works very well, and I've made it double-sided. So I actually used this to break that nut loose, and it worked perfectly. Don't think you're going to be able to get by with a pin punch and a sledgehammer. It will not work. All you do is destroy the nut, and you won't be able to get it out, and you won't be able to reuse it. So you need to reuse that nut. Very important to protect it. It houses the oil seal, actually, that nut as well on this side. Anyway, the bearings, the parts you're going to need. I got this off eBay. It's an NTN cartridge style where the outer races are joined together. That is a 4T CRI 0685. I think that's what that says. And the two oil seals, TC seals, they're 40 by 52 by 8 and 50 by 62 by 7. That's the important numbers out of the way. Now, to get this undone, the only way you can do it is to put this in a big strong vise. You clamp the vise on here, on the housing, have it this way up, and go for your life on that nut. I've done that off camera and away from here because I actually don't have a vise strong enough to do it. I had to go somewhere else. A mate of mine who's got a strong vise, crack that nut loose. And once you've got that loose, should be just finger tight, maybe not. There we go. I think my locking tabs are a bit getting in the way, so there we go. Yeah, definitely those locking tabs. Didn't file them out enough. I might have to put the phone down for this one. So once you've got the ring nut off the inside, most likely gonna have to press the stub axle out of the housing. You can, if you want, try smacking that with a sledgehammer or something and try and bashing it out, but good luck to you. If you mushroom the end of this shaft over, it's just a pain I don't have to deal with. So but to press it out it's a bit fiddly and awkward. I mean, a small press is better because you can move things around quicker, but all I'm doing is supporting the bottom of the housing where it's still kind of square on the very edges of these two plates, because that stub axle has to come out and go in between the plates. It's probably going to get caught the first time I set it up. Oh, there it goes. Usually I have to bugger around and rearrange the plates and a handful of times, or it just falls apart straight away because you're doing it on camera, make a fool of you. But that's basically what you want. If you're changing the original factory bearings, those outer races, the outer and the inner, will be two separate rings, two separate items with a large spacer in between them on the outer races. Likewise, if it's the factory bearings, the inner races will not have that spacer built into the nose, so they have a separate spacer ring which looks like this. This is the original one out of my car. I don't need it anymore, but I will use it later. So now that oil seal is out of there, that comes out, goes in the bin. You see the grease in there is all black. I think when I did this last time, I didn't put enough grease in, so the bearings got very hot, way too hot. So now what we've got to do is you leave that on there, and you actually put this in here like this, back to front, and use that to press the outer race out of here, like so. As I said, you put that in back to front, you're actually using the rollers to press that out. That's why you don't really want to reuse any of this. And once we've got everything all clean, degreased and dry, we want to, like I said, polish out the bore a little bit with some emery paper or wet and dry fine grit, that's fine, and polish up the shaft there so nice and shiny. You probably can't see on there, but on this diameter here there was some little scratches from when we pressed the bearing off. So if there's any little high points or scratches, that's no bueno. We want to actually polish that off so nice and smooth and shiny. And on this diameter here, that larger one, that's where our oil seal, our TC seal, rides on that diameter there. So if there's a big deep groove in there or something, you might want to, I don't know, get a new stub or put a speedy sleeve on it or something, or whatever they're called. But for the bore here, for the outer race, just do it by hand. It's no problem at all. It doesn't take much. Just like so. And the nut, like I said, I filed down with a little half round file, got in there and filed down all the little sharp dags and things from inside the slots from when we got it apart. So I can still catch something with my finger there, so it needs a bit more work on that one there. So that's just so we don't rip our oil seal apart. So you'll have to forgive the fan noise. It's actually a bit warm today, like 39.8, Jesus. It was 35 a minute ago, so apparently that's sad onions or something, so we definitely need a bit of airflow and keep hydrated. Another thing too is when you're handling your new bearings, you want to try your very best, do your utmost to keep these spotlessly clean. You don't want any grit, sand, dirt, metal, old grease, anything. We don't want any of that going in there because, you know, that'll reduce the life of the bearings. And also what I did was put a little Sharpie mark on here and here, just so I know I'm going to put that the right way round. You know, keep that race in that side of the outer race. We've got our nice, clean, polished, degreased stub axle sitting on the press like that. Going to slide that over there. I'm actually going to put a bit of oil, just a tiny little smear of oil on these two diameters, just to ease her down, and what we've got, because we need to reach over this shaft and get that little bearing race all the way down to this shoulder, I've got a bit of RHS. Yeah, actually, if you've got a bit of pipe with an internal diameter of 35 millimeters, that's perfect for this, but I don't actually have any round pipe at the moment, so I'm using this bit of RHS. And because this RHS isn't quite big enough, it's going to get caught on the bearing, on this bearing diameter down here. So to get it the rest of the way, I'm actually going to use our original factory spacer that was on the inner race, because that's the right diameter, and I'm going to use that to get it 99.9% of the way down. The last little millimeter, I'm just going to tap that with a hammer. And so once we've got the inner race pressed on the little stub there, down to the shoulder, it's time to press in the outer race into the housing. See my little Sharpie mark is on the inside of the control arm, because that is the one I put the Sharpie mark on, and that's going to go in there that way around. Get a bit tight at the bottom. Now what we have to do is pack this with grease. Right, now to pack grease into bearings, it takes a little bit of practice. It's not difficult at all. You're going to get greasy doing this, there's no two ways about it. So what we do, scoop up a big finger full of grease like that, and you're going to poke it in the top or the bottom, it doesn't really matter. I think I did the last one from the bottom because this is the inside of between the two inner races. We're going to have to have lots of grease in here anyway, so I don't want to have to wipe up all the grease from the outside. So we just stick it on there, and you've got to kind of cup your finger around the diameter of the shaft and push the grease in through the gap at the bottom, and you're kind of creating like a hydraulic pressure, which is squeezing the grease in between the rollers. And you might feel like you're not, once you got it right, you might feel like you're not doing anything, but you'll notice you keep doing that and the grease kind of vanishes, and it's actually getting squeezed up under the cage, under the rollers. Very important that you do this, because we want to pack the grease into the bearings properly. So you keep doing that until keep re-wiping it, keep re-squishing it until you see the grease squeezing out between the rollers on the opposite side. See that? So you want it to look like that all the way around. So this can take a bit of time, and like I said, you're going to get messy. And I think this is why I'm having to do this again so soon on this car, is because I didn't grease them properly. And that was 10 years ago. I didn't really know what I was doing, but now I know better. Yeah, 10 years ago I did it, but I've only been driving the car for 18 months, so the old bearings had about less than 20,000 Ks on them, and they were absolutely howling, really noisy. So now it's coming out all the way around. I'll put a little bit on top, so I'll kind of squeeze it back in. I'm going to put this in the housing just for safekeeping. We don't want to, if we drop this in the dirt now, we're in for a world of pain. So in she goes. Yep, nice and safe there. So now we get the other inner race and do the same thing. And we're also going to fill the outer race with grease. Got that the wrong way around. Gotta concentrate. That goes on that way around. Goes on the shaft like that. And we've got to use our spacer ring and our piece of pipe to press that down on the shaft until everything bottoms out, goes tight, and we should still be able to spin the control arm on the now installed bearings. So when we're doing the final press, we want the trailing arm to be loose, and we're actually supporting the bottom of the stub axle. Since we're pressing the inner race in on the stub axle, we need to support the stub axle, keep this loose, and while you're pressing, keep wiggling this around because you don't want it to get caught in a funny angle and bound up and do damage. So we're nearly there. Still loose. Oh, it just bottomed out, and now that spins on the new bearings. Give it a few extra little pumps, and yeah, apart from the arm hitting the frame of the press, I think that's a success. So now all we've got to do is put the ring nut in the back and put the oil seals in. Well, this is what it looks like when you're done goofed. Remember last shot? I had that in there and we're all happy. I'm getting hungry. It's lunchtime and I was looking forward to going in and washing my hands and getting this back on the car, get it back on the road. So I got to put the ring nut on. Goes about 2 turns and gets jammed. Oh, shit. Well, get my spanner on there, give it another little bit of a turn. Ugh. No, it's completely locked up. Get it out. There's metal shavings in the threads. Remember when I was pressing the outer race in and right near the bottom I said, oh, it got a bit tight, didn't it? Well, I was looking at the bloody phone screen at that point, not paying enough attention. So I looked at my ram that I was using to press the bearing in, and oh, I think it clipped the threads on the way down. And so now this is happening. And to get that back out, scoop all the bloody grease out of there and inspect the threads. Around there somewhere. I can't even see it now. I think it's in here, just on this side there. One of the threads has been pushed over. So there's your problem. So now I'm going to have to get in there with a carbide burr on a Dremel tool or something and grind out that little damaged bit of thread. And there might be another little bit just there on that side where I stupidly tried tightening the nut up. Thankfully, I think the rest of the threads are going to be okay. Just those 2 little spots I have to grind out. And of course all the metal dust and shavings are going to go in there, and I'm not pressing that outer race out again. I'm just going to have to wash it really good. And of course when I pressed that apart, ginger carefully and trying not to damage the new bearings, and I was trying to catch the stub axle, and of course when it let go, this fell in my lap and that pulled that out of my hand, so that landed in the dirt in all the grease, with the grease and everything. Oh, it's just, what does a guy have to do? Fuck's sake. Alright, we're back on track. That's going in there properly now. All I had to do was grind out a little bit there, just like 2 threads in there and another little bit on the opposite side. And I did actually grind down a bit of this somewhere, just a tiny little bit right there where the first 2 threads there where the top had mushroomed over, and we're good to go again. So degrease that, get all the grit out of there because I was grinding it with one of these, and put that back in there. And yeah, don't do this. Pay attention when you're pressing things. Oh god. Alright, we're back on track. She's back together. The ring nut went in right this time. Now it's time to tap the oil seals in, and we're pretty much done. I got to torque that nut up to spec, more than 200 newton meters. I can't do that here because this vise is not strong enough. I actually broke this bench last time I tried to do it here. So you can try and put the seal in the nut before you screw the nut in, but in my experience, when you're screwing that on, it just pushes the seal back out again as the nut goes on. So it's easy enough to just tap it in. You can tap it in with a screwdriver if you're careful. That's what I'm going to do. The thing about those TC seals, there's a metal ring embedded in the rubber, and it's standing up on its side around the outside diameter, just on the outside diameter. If you get a punch like this and you start tapping it in, you want to only tap on the punch, just tapping on the outside diameter of the seal. If you go too far in, you bend it and damage it. Try and get some footage of that best I can. These tiny little seals are such a pain to get in. Like, you tap one side in and the other side pops out, so it took an age to get in there, and I think I dented it and damaged it, but it's touching all the way around. It's still tight on the seal diameter, so I think we'll be okay. If it's not okay, then all the grease will leak out and I'll be doing this again in a few weeks' time, but that's my problem. And there you have it. We got there in the end. This put up a hell of a fight. The thread getting damaged, and the seals wouldn't go in either side. I had struggled to get this side in as well. Like this one that I did this morning, first thing, not a problem. Breeze, flew together. This one, every step of the way. Maybe it's just because as soon as I start filming or recording anything, nothing goes right, it seems like. But she's done now. So the next thing, we have to torque the ring nut up to 205 newton meters, and like I said, I can't do that here. Something to note is on the outside, the bearings are exposed, so that seal isn't doing anything until the wheel hub goes on. So that's when it's back on the car. So I'm just going to wrap a rag around it like this to stop stuff getting in. And yeah, I'll try and get some footage of tightening the nut up, just in case you want to see it. Yeah, and then we're going to be throwing all this back under the car and take the car for a test drive, see how much quieter it is. Yeah, looking forward to that. But now it's lunchtime, I'm pooped. Well, I got the car back together. Didn't get any footage of tightening up the ring nut. I mean, it's not complicated. So, and the guy's house I was at, you know, I just had no time. We were all in a bit of a hurry, so I just had to get it done. And last night, I mean, it's the next day now. Last night it was getting late. I just wanted to get it all back together without filming. You know, I was just, you know, fed up of working on it. So, she's all back together. Just the reverse of disassembly. You know, nothing complicated about putting the trailing arms back in. Yeah, I mean, what more do you say? Put the wheels back on, and yeah, have to torque up the axle nut when it's on the ground, obviously, because the castle nut and the hub here and the axle, that has to be done up to 195 newton meters. So that's just about as high as my torque wrench will go. And so yeah, you need the handbrake on, and it needs to be in first gear. Sometimes you need to even chock the wheels, otherwise you just move the car. If I put my full weight on this is set to 195. like that. Click. And this one, click. Now the next thing we have to do, there is a cotter pin that has to go in here, split pin, whatever you want to call it. So it's a bit harder for me because I got the alloys on here, but you need to tighten the nut further until one of the holes line up with one of the slots in the nut. Yeah, obviously for me it's a lot harder because it's way down inside the wheel and I have to sneak the cotter pin in at a funny angle to get it through the hole, but I have done it. It'd be much easier for you if you got the stock Steelies. The important thing is tighten it to line the hole up. Do not loosen it. This nut has to be very, very tight. It's not like other cars that have a single tapered roller bearing where you tighten it up a little bit and back it off half a turn or whatever. Not like that at all. This has to be super tight. Just thought I'd do a quick autopsy while we're on the subject of wheel bearings of the old ones and see if I could see any evidence of why they're making so much noise. Don't know if you can see that on the film, on the camera, but there is on the rollers a little darker brown band somewhere in the middle, just slightly tinted brown on the rollers, and the same thing on the race there. It just looks like a different surface finish, sort of towards the bottom of the taper, but that's actually brown. It's a different colour to the shiny surface around it. It tells me that it got too hot. Just lack of lubrication, not enough grease, as I suspected. So yeah, that's what happens when you don't put enough grease in your wheel bearings. Now these would have actually worked. They just keep working for as long as I could tolerate the noise, basically. I mean, bearings, in my experience, wheel bearings on cars or any kind of bearings, they're so unbelievably tough. They just work and work and work. They could be glowing red and they'll still work. I mean, they won't just disintegrate and fall apart. I've even on my old Brumby Ute, I had a front wheel bearing that when I took it out and had to replace it, I pressed it out and it fell out in about half a dozen pieces. It was completely smashed, but somehow I was still driving on that. In any case, it's not good to have noisy bearings or not enough grease. So yeah, just thought it'd be interesting to show. Quick sign off for the video. I just realised I never actually filmed an ending for it on the wheel bearings. I'll keep it quick because the video is already way too long as it is. It's a few weeks later. The wheel bearings are now quiet. Beautiful. Actually, a week or two after I replaced those wheel bearings, I went on a nice trip down to Beachport for the weekend from Adelaide. Did a whole lot of four-wheel driving in the sand. Great fun, had a great time. And over that weekend I did probably 1500 Ks I think within a few days, and yeah, not a peep out of the wheel bearings. There's no grease leaking out, so that dented seal obviously is fine, as shitty as it looks. What I did actually have a problem with, that's not related, was the tail shaft. I had a single piece rear tail shaft custom made, and the rear uni joint actually shit itself on the weekend before, amazingly. So I actually had to go to U-Pull it that day. Spent about 18 hours over the weekend, like 3 days before I was supposed to go, fitting this two-piece tail shaft out of an L series. And what I actually had to do was make a cross member for the center support bearing, and yeah, that was a lot of work. So but I did the trip, not a single vibration on the highway. Absolutely loved it. Beautiful smooth car, and yeah, great time for driving. Got back on the Sunday morning. Monday when I went to go to work, and the rear uni joint on this tail shaft now is vibrating like hell. So I mean, what can you what can you expect for a single second-hand tail shaft? I've got some new uni joints, bearings, whatever you want to call it, on order, and despite these being the staked ones, I'm going to replace the uni joints in them, so stay tuned for that. Make a little video on that. But yeah, as far as the wheel bearings go, we are golden. Thanks for watching. Thanks for persevering to the end if you're still watching. I mean, it's been a bloody long video, but yeah, that's how you replace wheel bearings in a Brumby or a Leone wagon.